fought the Hyksos, and drive them out of Egypt, ending the Hyksos rule. The new kingdom of Egypt was then founded, by Ahmose I. Circa 1500 BC, Iron Age begins in Southwest Asia. Great cities stand abandoned in the jungles of Central and South America, with no explanation where the inhabitants went. They left, leaving their homes unattended. It is a current scientific consensus that these cities were built and abandoned between 900 and 1000 AD, few centuries before Europeans arrived. This estimate is based on the ridiculous notion that since indigenous people in Americas were found in less advanced stage of social development than Europeans, humans must have arrived in America late, only 10,000 years ago, and thus, civilization in America must have started several thousand years later, and was conquered before it had time to make all the inventions of the Old World. Many of these ancient American civilizations had long ceased to function by the time of the first European arrivals, late 15th, early 16th centuries. Where they persisted, these cultures were substantially different from the original mother civilizations that gave rise to them. Stories of their past glory far exceeded humble peasantry of those days. It wouldn't be unsafe to assume that ancient pre-Columbian civilizations of the Americas were contemporary to that of Egypt, India, China, and Mesopotamia. And apparently, they were brought to decline in the same fashion, and by the same woes, as their counterparts across Eurasia. As documented in the National Academy of Sciences report, Peru suffered a swift and devastating climate change 3,600 years ago, leading to the collapse of the Supi Valley civilization along the Peruvian coast. Supi, or Carol, civilization was established near 5,800 years ago. Supi fished with nets, irrigated fruit orchards, and grew cotton and a variety of vegetables. They also built stone pyramids. But a massive earthquake, or series of quakes, and extensive flooding, followed by blowing sand, drove away residents of the area, around 3,600 years ago. Land, where the Supi had lived for centuries, became uninhabitable, and their society collapsed. A team of researchers of Potsdam Institute, in Germany, concluded that the change to today's arid climate in Sahara was not gradual. 3,600 years ago, the rain stopped coming, and the great grasslands of North Africa have turned into desert. These changes may have spurred the development of civilization in the Nile Valley. The change to today's desert climate is thought to have been triggered by the change in the tilt of the Earth's axis, shifting from pointing at Alpha Draconis, Thuban, to present pole star, Polaris, around 1900 BC. What is interesting here, Thuban, or nearby Kocheb, in Ursa Minor, which is brighter, and was far more likely used by the ancients for this purpose, would make a pole star, if the globe was tipped approximately 10 degrees. It makes exactly approximately 10 degrees of the last pole shift, a pole in Greenland. Given all this, we can safely suggest that at least 3,500 years have already passed since the last passage. Ancient Babylonians worshipped planets as gods. One could see them almost every night. But the top deity, Anu, which was identified with planet Nibiru, could be seen in the sky only once in 3,600 years. King Hammurabi doubted the existence of god Anu, and decided to exclude him from the pantheon, transferring his authority to Jupiter. This decision had severe consequences for Mesopotamia, when almost 250 years after Hammurabi, planet Nibiru again reappeared in the skies. Hammurabi reigned from approximately 1792 to 1750 BC. And 232 years after his death, as history tells us, Babylon was conquered by the Highlanders. However, 250 years after Hammurabi's death would bring us at 1500 BC, which is a much too early date, if the passage is to occur in our near future. Look at what happened to the Egyptian records after the last pole shift. Very careful records, census, the grain stores, all went to heck. This happened all over the world. What happened to the great cities of China? Records are disrupted. After the pole shift, with survivors picking up the pieces and trying not to die from hunger, timekeeping and calendars were the last of anyone's concerns. The young and hungry, especially those born after the cataclysms, had little regard for knowledge, carried by those befuddled old men, who talk of times long past. Knowledge is lost, and civilizations abandoned, for more immediate needs. Following the last pole shift, record-keeping stopped, and did not reinstitute for centuries. And for many hundreds of years afterwards, people lost track of just how many years passed, until records began to be kept again. In some areas, there was record-keeping by some means or another. Where one civilization failed to record this or that period, another, perhaps, kept reasonable records. Thus, putting this all together, it becomes clear that the record has gaps, here and there. Discovery rewrites history of ancient Mediterranean civilizations. New study suggests that the Late Bronze Epoch started a century earlier for Aegean civilizations in eastern Mediterranean than previously thought. Two independent researchers have shown that catastrophic eruption of Santorini, on the island of Thera, occurred a century earlier. Not around 1500 BC, but between 1627 and 1600 years BC. If this is true, it means that nearly all guesses about commercial and cultural ties in Mediterranean of that times need to be revised. It is thought that this eruption led to decline of Minoan civilization on Crete. Thus, Minoans had to reach peak of their culture a century earlier, before New Kingdom emerged in Egypt. The Mayan calendar is correct and accurate, and is pointing to the coming cataclysms. It was left behind by the visitors from the 12th planet, the Anunnaki, who used it to calculate the time of their home planet's return. The primary difficulty is in determining its correct initial date. Unless this is precisely known, the end date is questionable. How this December 21, 2012, date was determined? It is all a guess, a debate among archaeologists, though it is used as the accepted correlation today. The Americas and Europe have had no cultural contact, and evolved in isolation. Furthermore, Maya used three separate calendar systems. There was a 260-day ceremonial calendar. Then, there was the long count, which recorded only historical events. And there was also 584-day calendar, which tracked only astronomical events. There is virtually no way to line up the Gregorian and Mayan calendars. 2012 is an approved end times date for the media to focus on, precisely because it is a known fallacy, which is thus easily disproven. 2012 is not a valid date, as with the available data, the attempt to line up the Gregorian and Mayan calendars cannot be done correctly. There is utter confusion in human record-keeping regarding the timing of the last pole shift. The record has been distorted. The date cannot be known. And until the last weeks unfold, there is no certainty about the pole shift date. No one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Zetas declined to be more specific about the timing, stating back in November 2001, that if the exact date were known, the elite, and those in power, would use such knowledge to their own advantage. and, therefore, no date would be given by them.
You should assume no date clue from us whatsoever. Could be any year. Thus, any hint at timing by them is only to encourage mankind to prepare, to get their hands dirty in gardening, and get the public to move in their preparations. We are not allowed to give the date, but we are allowed to press man to heed our warnings. We are advising people, as we have since the start of Zeta Talk, to take action, not to wait. Zeta Talk. Nancy will tell you, she doesn't regret being in a location where she is today, and for having established a garden, and learned how to save and store seeds. Those who prepared early, would ultimately have no regrets. Nancy and Zetas have always stressed, that common man should not take their word for it. Everyone should read, think, and decide for himself. Zetas are advising that the earth changes be used as a guide, for one to take steps. Watching the earth changes, and the behavior of those in the corridors of power, will be your best clue. For those waiting for undeniable sign, 3 days of darkness, for Northern Hemisphere, followed by rotation stoppage and red dust, occurring weeks before the pole shift, this will be your undeniable sign, and any announced date ignored, until such signs are evident. Zeta Talk.
When Zeta Talk first started, in 1995, and claimed that the weather changes are heralding the approach of 12th planet, there was little to support it, for the satisfaction of those hungry for proof, as the Earth changes had just begun. As the weather increased in ferocity and extremes, earthquakes and volcanic activity gradually rose worldwide, and refused to abate, their words were taken more seriously. While many cling to not in my lifetime approach, insisting that changes predicted can occur, but will not be abrupt, and will not happen in the near future, certainly not in the lifetime of those alive today. And while academic science never misses an opportunity to soothe and reassure those starting to worry, the scale and rate of Earth changes shows that it can hit surprisingly soon, faster than anyone thought. In 2003, many watching the skies and the news considered the issue of Planet X passé. Then, something happened. Weather becomes unstable, WMO releases unprecedented warning. The World Meteorological Organization has noted in its report a record number of natural extremes in weather and climate occurring all over the world in recent weeks. The unprecedented warning comes from an impeccably respected UN organization that is not given to hyperbole. WMO considers natural extremes occurring this year in Europe, America, and Asia to be so significant that the world needs to be made aware of it immediately. The extreme weather, such as record high and low temperatures, record rainfall, and record storms, in different parts of the world, are in accord with climate change predictions. Computer modeling shows that because of warming atmosphere, climate becomes not only warmer, but also less stable. In June, southern France recorded breaking heat, sometimes exceeding 40 degrees Celsius, which is 5-7 degrees higher than the average. In Switzerland, this June was the hottest in 250 years. From May 29th and on, day temperature in Genova did not fall below 25 degrees. 562 tornadoes were recorded in the U.S., with previous records set in 1992, with 399 of them. In India, the heat preceding the rain season reached 45 degrees. It is possible that 2003 will be the hottest year ever recorded. All 10 hottest years of 143 years of global temperature observations happened after 1990, with 1998, 2001 and 2002 being most outstanding. The trend, since 1976, is roughly 3 times that for the whole previous millennium. Instability of climate.